Well, hello, everybody, and thanks so much for joining me for another edition of Face the Facts. I'm your host, April Moss. I'm delighted to be joined by my friend Clay Clark. Joining me today, Clay, I feel like you are a CBDC expert. It was you who I first found out about this, and of course, with General Flynn talking about the executive order that Biden had signed last spring, trying to bring awareness to the general public of what central bank digital currencies mean for the American person. Now, I'm going to let you take it away because you are
Yeah.
so good at,
Well,
at doing that.
well, I'll just say this real quick. The word expert, I challenge everyone to think about what that word means. I have a dog training a business, and people say, you're a dog training expert? Well, let me explain how I become an expert. I just recognize that, wow, there's a need. People have dogs that they want to train. Wow, people have hair they want to have cut. So I started a haircut chain called Elephant in the Room, and then I have a dog training business. And so how do you become an expert? You just obsessively focus on the problem, the research, the facts. You start studying the experts, and you do that till your head explodes. And right after you begin hating the subject, you just keep studying and studying and studying. So there was a period of my life where all I studied was haircuts for men, and then I built the Elephant in the Room business. There was a time where I focused on dog training, and then anyway, so here we are now talking about central bank digital currencies, and I think I've maybe become an expert because I just have obsessed on it, because I call it the ultimate freedom killer. I mean, at the end
Yeah.
of the day, it's going to end freedom if it happens.
Yeah. And privacy and all of that.
Yeah.
So, I know that there have been some probably later developments
Yeah.
regarding BRICS. Does you have anything to share with us
Yeah.
about
Let me do
that
this.
and
I'm
what
going to
that
play
means?
a couple clips that I want to play here, and I'll play, folks, and just kind of bear with me on the audio, folks. But this first clip comes at us via Robert Kiyosaki. Okay, so this is the guy who wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad. Here we go.
We're going down. It'll be the biggest crash in world history. This is toilet paper. Back in 1972, I bought my first gold coin. I paid $50 for this. 50 of these for one of these. Today, it takes 2,200 of these.
And he's talking about dollars and how dollars equate to the value of gold. That's Robert Kiyosaki, and he's saying, we are going down. It is going to happen. The dollar is going to collapse. And he just is saying that at scale. He's echoed now by Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx. He hopped on Fox News to say it is happening. Charles Payne, from, you know how mainstream media works. That's where you came from. Charles Payne, Fox is hopping on saying we will see the collapse of the dollar. That's from Fox. You're beginning to see people like General Flynn, who's been talking about it for 3 years. He's now more aggressively stating that. You're beginning to see. So it's not just people in the precious metals space that are saying it. I mean, these are big-time personalities. President Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States, he actually made a pledge that as president, he will not allow central bank digital currencies. So now people are going, well, what are they? So let me explain how this works. For the last 17 years, since I was 26 years old, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they've been hoarding the earth's gold, like an episode of Hoarders, but of gold. And Iran, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, they've all been hoarding the earth's gold. And the question is, why are they hoarding the earth's gold? Well, they've been preparing for a big event. Now, in America, we think about things in typically like a 4-year cycle. The president, you might think of things in a 2-year cycle, a 4-year cycle. In countries like Russia or China, one could argue countries that are like dictatorships, they're thinking about things over like a 50-year plan. They're thinking about designs of a decade. And their plan is to remove the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency this year. That's their plan. And they've been working on it for 17 years previous to now. So we're now just hearing about it. So how can I prove this? Well, BRICS now tested BRICS Pay, their form of payment that doesn't use the U.S. dollar. It works. They've built a physical bank. It's a huge building in Shanghai, China, called the New Development Bank, a monstrous tower where they were going to use this system. They perfected the kinks of the system working in China. It's called the social credit score system. They've installed the 5G towers everywhere that were needed to make it happen. They now have blanketed the Earth and 30,000 low orbit satellites that make it happen.
Okay, now let me stop you right there. Let's talk about that 5G for a second, because most people are like, what are you talking about, Clay? I thought 5G was just to give us faster internet. Why is a 5G tower necessary for this to roll out?
Okay, well, today my wonderful wife is driving back from a cheerleading competition with my kids, and I am calling her to check on her just to see how she's doing, because I have a soul. I love my wife. I want to make sure she's doing okay, so I'm just checking on her. Well, with the GPS technology that exists, many parents today, I'm not suggesting you should do this, many parents know where their kids are at all times because they have a GPS on their phone, and they're constantly tracking the physical locations of where their spouse or their kids are, whatever. Could you imagine what will happen when a dictatorship, a tyrannical government now knows where you are at all times because they've put surveillance under your skin? So when you go to time2freeamerica.com/revelation, you can see the patents at time2freeamerica.com/revelation. The patents, Charles Lieber was a Harvard scientist that got paid $50,000 a month to create RNA modifying nanotechnology that goes under the skin, aka graphene. Now, graphene is the basis of quantum technology. So follow me, folks. Graphene is in the shots. Graphene is the basis of quantum technology. And the name of the technology being developed by MIT, you can Google it right now. Just type in MIT quantum dot. MIT has developed a quantum dot, a technology which can store your medical and financial records under your skin. The name of the central bank digital currency platform they're going to use is called quant.network. That's the website, quant.network. They virtually mandated the shots for everyone to put the technology under their skin. I mean, the vast majority of conservatives have put the shots under their skin. The vast majority of Democrats have put the shots under their skin. The only people that I know of who haven't put the shots under their skin are primarily truth seekers that seek the truth over political parties, which is a bizarre idea that your listeners can understand and my listeners can too. But, you know, in my world, I don't care what the Republican Party has to say, and I don't care what the Democrat Party has to say. I believe they're both the uniparty. But
Yep.
I mean, I don't know the percentage. I just know that most of the doctors that I work with directly are telling me that virtually every single patient they see has put this RNA modifying nanotechnology under their skin. And final little not fun fact, but it is a fact. Georgia Tech announced about 4 weeks ago that they can now make semiconductors using graphene. So, you know, typically you think of a semiconductor, you think of like Silicon Valley making silicone chips, computer chips. Georgia Tech, you can look it up right now. Just type it into Google. Georgia Tech, type in Georgia Tech. The words you would type in is Georgia Tech semiconductor. So I'm going to type in Georgia Tech semiconductor, and I'm going to type in graphene. And then you're going to see that Georgia Tech is proudly announcing, Georgia Tech researchers create first functional graphene semiconductor. Folks, we're talking about under your skin technology that can produce a semiconductor. I mean, it's all been laid out. And I believe if you open your Bible to Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18, you can learn about the mark of the beast, Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18. Even Joe Rogan is describing it as the mark of the beast. You're beginning to see Glenn Beck describe it as the mark of the beast. People don't want to say that because immediately it labels you as a religious extremist. And then the other Bible verse I'll give you is Revelation chapter 16, verse 12 through 14. In the Bible, Revelation chapter 16, verse 12 through 14, in the Bible it states that when the Euphrates River dries up, the false prophet will show up, and China and Russia shall team up. It's Revelation chapter 16, verse 12 through 14.
And we already know the Euphrates River is drying up.
And Yuval Noah Harari, they refer to him as the prophet, and he's the one calling for surveillance under the skin. And China and Russia are teaming up financially and militarily. So January 1st, BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they added an additional 4 countries, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia. And Putin is now in charge of BRICS for this year. And he has said he wants to add 25 additional countries, which means that the total gross domestic product of the BRICS nations would exceed that of the G7 countries or America. So we're going to see a flipping of the balances. And I believe you can learn more about that by reading Revelation chapter 6, verse 6, where the Bible talks about hyperinflation.
Yeah. And Clay, I mean, what are people to do to combat this, right? I mean, short of obviously we're hoping that Trump would get into office so that he could stop this, but let's just say if this ends up happening.
Yeah.
And truly, I don't know that Trump could stop anything,
Yeah.
Regarding the BRICS nations, right? I mean, it would be more stopping a central bank digital currency from affecting America. But
Yeah.
people need to make sure, and we're not financial advisors, but to be able to hedge against the inflation.
Well, I'll say this. If I was like your big brother or your little brother or your cousin, and there wasn't a microphone and there wasn't a show, this is exactly what I would say to you. I think a lot of times people hop on shows and they say something different or with a different energy, but this is exactly how I would be in person if I was talking to someone. I would say you open your Bible to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Because the Bible tells us in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 where you find hope. Now, someone will say, yeah, but at a practical level, where can I find hope? I go, I don't think that people understand. I use this phrase, and I say it, but I don't think sometimes people understand what I mean when I say it on shows. I am eternally optimistic. So in terms of eternity, I am very optimistic. Now, in terms of like on the earth,
worldly things,
I am very pessimistic based upon the facts that I know. But if you open your Bible to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, it says, but I would have you not to be ignorant, brethren. That means people listening to the April Moss show, concerning them which are asleep, yet ye sorrow not, even as others which have no hope. And I'm reading this. It says, for if we believe that Jesus Christ died and rose again, even so them which also sleep in Jesus will God bring with him. For this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive, which is us, and remain until the coming of the Lord, that's us, shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God. And the dead in Christ shall rise first. It's people who are already dead. Then we which are alive and remain, that's us, shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. And it says, wherefore, comfort one another with these words. So wherefore, comfort one another with these words. So in terms of like peace of mind, comfort, how's it going to all end? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. Now, on a practical level, this isn't meant to be a shameless infomercial or something, but I sat down with a banker in 2005-ish. Then I built my first company, which I don't own, but it was a big company called djconnection.com. And we did entertainment for thousands and thousands of weddings, 4,000 weddings a year, which is 80 weddings every weekend. Crazy. And the business was booming, and I was making about $150 per wedding. So you do the math. I was making some good money. So I talked to a friend of mine who owned a bank, and I said, hey, you own a bank. We're at the country club. I just want to know, what should I do with my money? If you're me right now, 25 years old. This is 18 years ago. No great reset, no lockdowns. He said, well, you should take your money and you should buy precious metals, 25% of it. And I said, really? And I'm thinking maybe he's selling it. Maybe he has a pitch. Maybe he's, he says, I've known this guy forever too. And he says, yeah, you just got to do it. You have to. I said, why? He said, Clay, I own a bank because I understand how banks work. I said, how does a bank work? And I didn't know any of this stuff. He said, I lend money that I don't have to people that shouldn't be borrowing it, and I charge them interest for doing it. And I go, what do you do? He says, I borrow money that I don't have, and I lend it to people that are buying things that they shouldn't be buying, and I charge them interest for it. And I said, well, where do you get your money? He says, I borrow money from I borrow money, and the Federal Reserve, they print money that they don't have, that they lend to me, and then they charge me interest to borrow money from them that they don't have. And then I lend it to people that also don't need it. And that's how it works. I said, he goes, hey, Clay, we literally invent money every day. That's what a mortgage is. It's called a death grip. And I'm going, what? So I needed some.
Yeah.
And he says, this book here, The Collapse of the Dollar. If I were you, I'd read this. I'd read The Creature from Jekyll Island. Well, I read that thing. And
That's a great book.
I started recognizing, wow, this idea of destroying our monetary system isn't a new idea. It's happened. It's called fiat currency. It's going to happen. It's called inflation. It's called hyperinflation. So I asked him, who he bought from. He told me about a boutique dealer, and you guys can go there if you want, or find someone else you like. But I started buying precious metals. Now, my wife and I bought a lot of precious metals from a company called goldline.com, and I have no issue with them, goldline.com. Glenn Beck endorses them. But then over the years, I found that I kind of wanted to work with someone where I knew their name. I could shake their hand. I could connect with them. I felt like it was like like the relationship you might have with your local hairstylist or something. And so BH-PM, that's who I buy from now, BH-PM. So I'd recommend you buy precious metals. And then the banker told me, with the other quarter of your wealth, you should be buying real estate from emotional people. You want to have land. You want to have land and a plan. What?
Yep.
Like, if it all goes down, you want to have. So that's a big thing. And then the other part of that, I said, what do I do with the other cash? What should I do, Mr. Banker guy? And he said, you just got to make sure you got food. You got, you're taken care of, because he's like, at some point, this house of cards, this fiat system, this banking system that we live in today, it's going to collapse. I don't know when it's going to be, but it's going to happen. And that's maybe the advice I would give to your listeners today.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, the number one thing is getting right with the Lord, because we're seeing revelation play out, as you mentioned, and we can't hope in anything of this world. It's our hope. Our only hope is in Jesus. Yeah. And but as we are still here, and as the Lord tarries, we need to be making the smartest decisions that we possibly can for our family and our family's future. So I appreciate all of that great advice, Clay. Now, one last question I have for you is, if you can try to put it into perspective, as people think like, okay, so the BRICS nations are coming together, and America will no longer be the, authority, for the financial, security for everybody. Could you paint a picture for us of what that is going to look like? Yeah. When that all does happen.
Let me explain to you, and I'll try to make it kind of funny, because it's really dark. I'll try to make it kind of funny. So every year, when I was 25, 26, kind of early 30s, there's a time where you're kind of young, married, you're newly married, and you're really on it. And maybe somebody out there, you're still on it, but it's like you're sending out Christmas cards to everybody with your family photo, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're going to the Christmas parties because that's what you're supposed to do, because you're a young couple. Maybe you still go if you're in your 40s, but I find that in the mid 20s, that's kind of like the peak flow, where you're sending out you're sending out cards that say, Cousin Eddie, thank you so much for being my cousin. Here's my family Christmas photo. You send it, you put the magnet on the fridge. It's a whole industrial complex. And then for Christmas, they send you a gift card, because they're your family, and then you send them too. Now you don't get cynical yet. You don't say, couldn't we just call it even? But no, you send them a $20 gift card. They send you a $20 gift card. Well, eventually you start to get a wallet that's packed with these gift cards from years past. So the other day I was at the airport, and I guess I had too much of my shampoo bottle was too big or something. And so I had to open up my suitcase. They looked through it, and they're like, sir, you have too much shampoo. You got to throw this away. And I noticed, I was like, you know what? Since I'm cleaning out my suitcase, I might as well clean out my wallet. And I'm going through, April, and I found gift cards that were from years ago. And I'm going, that store's not open. Oh, that one's not open either. That's going to be kind of how our money is. It's not going to be worth less. It's going to be worthless. Like, these countries are not going to accept our money as valid currency. And they're going to say, now, if you want to transact, you need to be a part of the central bank digital currency. And that is a horrifying place to be. But that's where they want to take us.
Yeah, thank you for that, because I think it's just really too hard, too complex for a lot of people to wrap their minds around. And so what they do is they hear about central bank digital currency, and then they're like, but I'm going to put my blinders on and just get on with my life, because I can't think about that. So I love that you give people practical advice and practical steps to take in their life. It's one of my favorite things about you, Clay.
Well,
that's why you've been so successful.
I'm the most practical person that I've ever met. Primarily, I'm very, very pragmatic and very practical. But I appreciate you very much, and then I'll talk to you again offline today. But again, thank you so much for what you do, and for anybody who has not yet subscribed to April's podcast, I encourage you to do so, because the mainstream media is by and large paid for by Big Pharma, and therefore, if you want to hear Big Pharma with a side of fun, that's what the mainstream media is. But it's basically Big Pharma with a side of fun. If you don't want to hear that, and you want to hear the truth with a side of fun, subscribe to April's podcast. Thank you, April. I really do appreciate you. And if you haven't joined the Reawaken Tour, folks, June 7th and 8th, that's our final Reawaken America Tour, June 7th and 8th in Detroit, Michigan. General Flynn, Eric Trump, Laura Trump, Kash Patel, Team America, all going to be there June 7th and 8th. Get those tickets at time2freeamerica.com.